how's it going? I'm your host, Isaiah here, and this is Homework Hotline, the show with all the helping hands on all of your homework needs. Thank you so much for tuning into our show today, and if you haven't seen our show before, let me run you through how it works. Each episode, we bring on a very scholarly, smarter than myself panel of some scholars who review and teach certain lessons, some of which you guys may be working on in class. Going live at our Twitch at HMG_Twitch, and if you want to ask your question, just tune into our awesome stream with these awesome people in general. Now, let's get right into our first lesson of the day without any further ado. Sarah, how's it going? Thanks for coming back to Homework Hotline.
Oh man, thank you. I just want to get started with algebra 2, and I'm just gonna head right over. So our first two questions are kind of a simpler version of, actually we're gonna start off with the one on the right because it's kind of more simple than the first one. So we're basically just finding the inverse of these problems, and at first that might seem like, oh okay, like how do you do that? But it's actually not that bad. So you think of f of x and you're like, okay, f of x, that's weird, like how do I find the inverse of that? Well, what that basically is just y. So we're gonna view that, we're always just gonna read that as y, and then we're just gonna rewrite this as y equals negative 6x minus 7. Okay, so then after you have that, when you're finding the inverse, the essential part of it that you don't want to get wrong is just flipping it. So remember, just always flip. So the y and the x, you're just gonna change them. You're gonna flip them. So the y becomes the x, and then it becomes x equals negative 6y minus 7. And from this point, you're just literally just taking everything from the y and putting it on the x's side. So it'll be plus 7, right? Because you have to get rid of that first. So you're gonna add 7 to both sides. And then you're gonna have x plus 7 minus equals negative 6y, sorry. And after that, well, you have a coefficient on this side, and it's a negative. Unlike if you have a greater than or equal to here, it doesn't really make a difference. So you're gonna just divide this side because you want them to be, you want to get y by itself. So to get y by itself, divide, and then that's gonna leave you with a negative. Remember, we want to make this as simple to read as possible. So it's gonna be a negative 1 over 6x, because remember this is there's a 1 here, imaginary 1. And then you're gonna do negative 7 over 6, because we don't really want to divide that because we don't want decimals, so it'll just be negative 7 over 6. And that's gonna give you y. But more specifically, that's gonna give you your inverse. And how you would write that would be f of negative 1x, because the f of negative 1x is literally just saying the inverse, equals negative 1 over 6 x minus negative 7 over 6. And that's the first one. So that's kind of simple, it's kind of straightforward, you're just changing. But to reiterate that, now we have a fraction, and it's got one more step than the other one. So again, y, we're just going to count that as y. And over here, we're going to distribute, because we have a little factor here in front of this parentheses. So you always want to distribute first, because that's exponents, then distributing, then PEMDAS. So it would be negative 1 over 2x, and then also distribute it to the 3. So that would be negative 3 over 2, because we're not, again, we don't want to do decimals, that's not what we want to do. And then we're just going to switch the x and the y like we did last time over here. So the x and the y are going to flip, and this is going to be x equals negative 1 over 2y, and then minus 3 over 2. And again, we're just going to do the exact same thing that we were just doing before. Are you going to add, or are you going to divide? Multiply first. You're going to add first, because PEMDAS kind of says, well, actually that's not even true. PEMDAS doesn't say that. It says to multiply first. But in this scenario, you're not going to multiply first, because it's not, when you're just converting to inverses, that's not what you have to do. You have to get the y by itself first. So it's going to be adding 3 over 2, and then after you get x plus 3 over 2, that's when you're going to do your division. Normally it would be division, but when you have a fraction, you can't divide a fraction. Like, I mean, you can, but it's just like so weird. So instead of dividing, you just multiply by the reciprocal. So it's kind of like that keep, change, flip type of situation. So you're just going to multiply by the reciprocal of this, and that's just going to be negative 2 over 1. So multiply that side by negative 2 over 1, multiply this side by negative 2 over 1, and then that'll give you negative 2x. Actually, yeah, well, it's the same thing. But I guess you can argue that it would be easier, especially if you're in Algebra 2 right now, it's easier to look at this like multiplying it with a negative still there. So just instead of adding the negative here, just multiply by the 2 over 1. So then multiply by the 2 over 1 over here. So then you're still going to be left with a negative. And realistically, you can do this the same way that I was doing it, but some people might get confused. So just add the 3. Oh, right. So you're multiplying by the 2 over 1. So after you multiply by 2 over 1 here, multiply by 2 over 1 here, this is going to be x multiply the 3 over 2 by 2 over 1. That'll be, what is 3 times 2? 6. So this is going to be not 3, 6. And then over 2 times 1, 2. So 6 over 2 is going to equal negative y. I know that sounds like really confusing what I just did, but it's really not. So then after, I know it looks like a lot of work over here, this is your entire equation on the side. So a way of looking at 6 over 2 a lot easier is just do x plus 3, right? Because 6 divided by 2 is 3. So then 2x plus 3 equals negative y. And if you had multiplied by negative 2 over 1, you really would have gotten the same answer. So I mean, it's just a little easier to do it this way. But if you just want to like add another step, you would do it this way. But if not, you can completely just multiply by the negative 2 over 1. This way you're doing the exact same thing, you're just dividing by negative 1 to get y by itself, because remember that's our main goal. So then your final answer would just be y, or again f of negative 1x, is going to be equal to negative 2x and then minus 3, because your positive 2x is going to become a negative, and then your positive 3 is also going to be negative. So your final inverse function for this would be y equals negative 2x minus 3. But again, you wouldn't write it like that. Instead of writing the y, you would write this over here. But for like space purposes, I'm not going to write that out. It's just going to be f of negative 1x equals negative 2x minus 3. And those are the 2 questions that I had. So that's kind of all I have for you guys.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Sarah. That was a great lesson. Now, real quick, before we move on to the second part of our math block with Vincent, you guys know I love my shout outs on this show. So here's a quick shout out first to our Homework Hotline crew. Our crew we got working here. We have Nick, Ethan, Jose, and Miss McLean. You guys make the show possible. It's awesome with you guys. Now, I just couldn't imagine the show without you. Vincent, we're going to move on to you now with your math topic for today. You can take the floor whenever you are ready, my friend.
Cool, thanks, Isaiah. So today we're going to be talking about compound interest. And to start on the Jamboard, I've already written down the formula for it, and I've explained what each part is. So what we can do here is we look on the left, we have FV, which is future value. Over a certain period of time, after that period of time, how much is it going to be worth? P is the principal, that's the initial amount that was invested. And then it's 1 plus R over N. R is your rate, and it's always going to be in decimal form. And N is the number of times it's compounded per year. And then to the power of N times T, which T is time in years. So now that we know that, we're going to go ahead and get our first example problem thrown up here. First one is pretty simple, and it looks like this. So Okay, we read it. If you deposit $4,000 into an account paying 6% annual interest compounded quarterly, how much money will be in the account after 5 years? So what I like doing first is writing down everything we know. So we'll start with P. We know that's $4,000 because it says that's how much is invested initially. Next, we can look at our rate. It says 6%. So in decimal form, that will be 0.06. Next, we have our N value. That's how many times it's compounded per year. It says compounded quarterly, which means 4 times per year. N is 4. And our T, it says it's after 5 years. So our T is 5. And the future value is what we're looking for. So now we can set up the formula and plug in everything that we know. So we have FV, future value, equals 4,000. Inside the parentheses will be 1 plus 0.06 over N, which is 4, to the power of N times T, so 4 times 5. Now we can simplify everything as much as we can, so we'll start with everything inside the parentheses. If you divide 0.06 by 4 and add that to 1, you get 1.015. And that's to the power of 20. 4 times 5 is 20. What we can do from here is do 1.015 to the power of 20. Simplify it even further. You get 4,000 times 1.3469. I like to keep like 3 or 4 decimals. The more decimals you have, the more accurate your answer is going to be. And now we do 1.3469 times 4,000. And that gets your future value of 5,387.6. In this case, you can just keep the 0 at the end for 60 cents because it's really in dollars. And that's the answer to the first question. But now I have one more. This one's going to be a bit more complicated because we're going to involve logarithms in order to solve it. So this one reads, if you deposit $5,000 into an account paying 6% annual interest compounded monthly, how long until there's $8,000 in the account? So once again, we're going to start off by writing everything we know. So our P is $5,000, our principal amount invested. Our rate says it's 6% again, so that's 0.06. Our N, it says it's compounded monthly, so that would be 12 times per year. And our T is what we're looking for. How many years will it take to go from 5,000 to 8,000? And our future value we know is going to be $8,000. So now we can set up our formula and plug everything we possibly can in. So our future value is 8,000 equals our principal, 5,000. Inside the parentheses would be 1 plus 0.06 over N, which is 12. And then to the power of N times T, we don't know T, we know N is 12, so 12T. Now what you do from here is you simplify the parentheses as much as possible. So we still have the 8,000 equals 5,000. Inside the parentheses would then go to 1.005 to the power of 12T. What we can do from here is divide each side by 5,000, because right now what we're trying to do is isolate this T. We're trying to isolate the T. So we divide each side by 5,000. We get 1.6 equals 1.005 to the power of 12T. Now the next step, we have to take the 12T root, which makes 0 sense whatsoever. So what we're going to do is set up a log on each side of the equal sign. So we can take the log of 1.6, and you'll see why we're doing this in just a second, equals the log of 1.005 to the power of 12t. Now what we can do from here is use that one logarithmic property where we take the exponent and move it to the front of the log. So what that looks like, we still have log of 1.6 on the left side equals, now we take this 12t and we basically move it to the front. So now we have 12t times the log of 1.005. And now what we can do is divide each side by log of 1.005. So we have the log of 1.6 divided by the log of 1.005 equals 12t. We simplify the left. I'm going to move up to the right now. Simplify the left, we get roughly 94.2355. That's about 12t. Now we can divide each side by 12. And we're left with t equals about 7.9 years. Now what this means is it'll take 7.9 years to go from the $5,000 initially invested to the $8,000 that would be the future value. So that's basically everything I have. Went over logs, how you can relate them to compound interest. Went over the formula for compound interest. So I hope you guys learned something. Any questions, throw them in the chat and we'll go back to Isaiah.
Thank you, Vincent. Always a pleasure to have you on our show. Now we're going to actually jump to a break here before we move on to our second two tutors. But real quick, another batch of shout outs for some people in the chats. We have the girls from Raving for Retail, Kayleen, Liar, and Raquel. Thank you guys for coming to watch Homework Hotline. You guys can watch Raving for Retail on Mondays on our HMG YouTube. Also, we have Tristan Kinsfather. He's a graphic designer back at HMG News. Thank you for showing up, Tristan. And last but not least, from Foodie Finds, we have Natalie. She's a co-host there, and her show also airs on Mondays alongside Raving for Retail. Speaking of Foodie Finds, though, we have Alexis Bacani from Foodie Finds joined in our Homework Hotline crew today. She's going to talk to us a bit about her new show that she's joined, a little bit of Light Live. So stay tuned for that after our break, and we're going to go jump to it. So we'll see you guys in a bit. Hey everyone, welcome back to Homework Hotline, the show with the helping hands on all your homework needs. I'm Isaiah Gira as always, and before the break, we went through a very math-oriented block. Now we're going to go over to more English-related, but before that, we have Alexis Bacani from Little Bit of Light Live here to talk to us a little bit about her show, which airs on Tuesdays. Alexis, it's nice to have you on our show.
Hi, Isaiah. Thank you for having me. It's an honor to be on here. So a little bit of light focuses on mental health. I know it may not be an easy topic to talk about, but our show wants to help those of you who are, who are struggling, finding ways to struggling to find ways to cope with your mental health, or even if you don't really know about mental health, there's resources on our website to educate yourself, because mental health is real. Just because you're not going through it doesn't mean someone else isn't. So our next episode will be Tuesday with Simmons, where we will be talking about managing mental health in school.
That's awesome, Alexis. And you also work on Foodie Finds too, that's right? How's that going? How's
Yes,
Foodie Finds?
I love the girls. I love Natalie and Nakia. They're so good to work with. Probably one of the best people I've known. So our shows will air on Mondays, where we provide places to eat in Las Vegas, and we also talk about small businesses.
Well, awesome. You guys should tune into both of those shows. Alexis is a delight to have on our show. But now we are going to jump back into our lessons. We are going to Erica, who is going to teach us some Spanish for today. Hey, Erica, how's it going?
Hi, I'm good. Isaiah, did you get a haircut today?
Oh, well,
Looks
thanks for
good.
noticing. Thank you.
Muy guapo, me gusta, te veo.
Okay, calm it down there.
Hey. It's all right. Don't worry about it. I'm gonna teach him Spanish now, okay? You take a seat. Don't worry about it. He's all good. Don't worry about it. So, hi, welcome back. Today we're going over some boot stem changers for Spanish. So this is kind of similar to what we were learning last time in that we went over yo stem changers, except now we're going into more of a broader kind of stem changers. So the reason we call these boot stem changers is because the only verbs that are actually going to change when you conjugate are going to form a boot. So it's yo, tú, él, and ellos and ustedes. So when you kind of loop those all in together, it kind of looks like a boot. If you can draw, I can't, so but you kind of get the idea. So it's kind of a nice reminder. So don't worry about having to conjugate these weirdly for nosotros and vosotros because it doesn't apply. So the first ones we're going over are E to IE stem changers. And these stem changers apply to all kinds of verbs. So this isn't going to be something that just applies to AR verbs or ER verbs or IR verbs. It's going to be a whole array. So I got one of each type, so we can go over all of them. So the first one we have is cerrar, which means to close, actually. Sorry, don't know. Oh, I know why. I don't have it on there. Or not. Cerrar means to close, and when we're trying to apply that with E to IE, the E that we're talking about, it's always going to be the first E that comes up, and the same is going to apply for when we go to mentir and creer. We'll just start a new one, it's fine. So I'm gonna move this over because it's gonna get trouble. That's okay, we're gonna work with it. So this is going to change to cierre, and however, whatever you're putting after, like let's say you are closing something, maybe you're closing the door, you say, yo cierro la puerta. And if someone else is, you say cierres or cierra, depending on who you're talking about. As long as it's not has to do with nosotros or vosotros, which nosotros is we, vosotros is you guys in an informal way. Then we go down to mentir. Mentir means to lie, and we're going to change that to miento, which would be saying I lie, and the same thing applies. You just change it to either es or e or en, depending on how you're conjugating it. Then we have querer, which means to want or to desire, and we change this to quiero. Wait, the spacing's a little off. This is quiero, and again, same thing applies. So whenever you are having a verb like that, and these again are like a memorized list, there's not a real pattern to it. And again, we do it because it just sounds better. It just sounds better when we change it. So we change it. So now we're going to go over to O to UE stem changers. These are similar in that they follow a pattern of, oh, I changed this vowel or letter to this letter. So dormir means to sleep. So if you're saying I sleep, you say duermo. And if you're saying maybe you sleep, duermes. Almorzar means to eat lunch, which I would love to do right now because I'm very hungry. But we're just going to conjugate it for now. So hopefully in the future, yo almuerzo, which means to eat lunch, I eat lunch. Then we have poder, which means to be able to. So you're being able to do something. I can would be a better translation to English, I think. And I'd say I can do this. Maybe like, oh, can you do this for me? I say I can. Puedo. I can do that. Whatever you're asking me to do, I'll do it. I'm a pushover. So yeah, those are the sum changers I wanted to go over today. There's 2 more ones I'll hit on later, but I think I'll actually be going over rhetoric form next week, which is past tense. So that'll be super important for all of my Spanish 2 students. So if you need any help with preterite, make sure to tune in next time when I teach that. Back to you, Isaiah.
All right, Erica, thank you so much. Gracias. I have new Spanish words for you this week. You go get yourself some lunch. Go feed yourself. Real quick, before we turn it over to Leticia to wrap up our show today, another few quick shout outs. Wild Child in the chats, thank you for your support, hyping us up. We love to have you. We love to see all your supports. And also another quick shout out to our esports team. They made our homework hotline emotes. You guys, you might see it in the chat. It's got my face on it. It's pretty cool. It's pretty cool to be a Twitch emotes. Now, anyway, let's wrap it up with Leticia with English. What are you teaching for us, Leticia?
Today I'm teaching Rhetorical Devices.
Awesome. All right, you go at it.
Okay, so Rhetorical Devices, as mentioned in the last homework hotline edition, rhetorical devices are found in stories everywhere, and it's really important to know what they mean so that you can know what the author is trying to convey. So first we're going to be going over antithesis. So an antithesis is the use of contrasting words or sentences, or in other words, opposite ideas being used together. Anti means to go against or to not be something, and thesis means an idea. So it really is opposite ideas. An example of this would be man proposes, God disposes. So man and God are both 2 different ideas. They're opposites of each other. And to propose something is to bring something to the table, while to dispose something is to take away. So again, they're very different contrasting ideas. Moving on, we have an anaphora. So an anaphora is done by using repetition and successive statements. So it's like, we are going to pay attention, we are going to study, we are going to class, and we are going to pass that test. As you can see, we are repeating "we are" a lot. And it's done in successive statements. First they're doing this, and then they're going to do this, so that later they can do this. And then lastly, we have an anadiplosis. So anadiploses are really similar to anaphoras in that they do have repetition in successive statements. But the difference is that anadiplosis has repetition at the end and at the beginning. So I found a really big one from Glad You Came, which is like a song from like the 2000s written by The Wanted. And it's like a huge one. It starts with turning off the lights now. Now I'll take you by the hand you another drink it if you can. It just really like keeps on building up on top of each other, like with every single phrase it uses. And it's really significant in that like verse. And like the entire chorus is just a big anadiplosis. It's really cool. So as I mentioned before, it's important to know rhetorical devices because they really do convey what the author is trying to say. So like with an antithesis, it's used to show emphasis or to show relationships between people. The relationship that the first example was trying to show is that God chooses whatever, like kind of gets the final say in things, in terms of that piece of work. So, it shows emphasis. And anaphora is used to show emphasis or to tell a story. By saying that you are going to be doing something, you're going to be doing this, and later you're going to doing this, you really do take over that authority, and you have that power in that sentence. And again, it shows a story because it's in successive statements. And then lastly, an anadiplosis is used to show rhythm and flow. Because it is like a song lyric, it does make sense that they're using an anadiplosis for flow. And it can also be used to like tell a story, being that they're kind of also in successive statements. Something leads to another. It kind of does show like relationships between things. And that's all I have today for rhetorical devices. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Leticia. Thank you for wrapping us up. That is the end of our show, the end of our stream, everyone. Thank you so much for tuning into our show. Real quick, let's give one more final round of shout outs. A little bit of Light Live. They air every Tuesday. You guys can watch them at our Twitch at HMG_Twitch. Be sure to watch our Homework Hotline edited videos on YouTube on Mondays at HMG News. And thank you to all of our HMG shows who appeared in the chat today. Raven for Retail, Foodie Finds, Tristan, you too, we love you, buddy. Thank you everyone for showing up today and watching our stream. And always remember, if you guys need help with your homework, don't be afraid to call the homework hotline. We'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.